/AITA husband mocked me at family dinner, so I exposed him with proof. The sound of my husband's laughter cutting through the dinner conversation made my stomach drop. Not because it was happy laughter, I'd grown to recognize the difference, but because I knew exactly what was coming next. "Oh, here we go," Marcus said, his voice carrying that particular tone that made everyone at the table turn to look. Sarah's got that look on her face. The one she gets when she's trying to do math in her head. His mom, Linda, smiled politely while his dad, Robert, chuckled. His sister Emma looked uncomfortable, but she always did when Marcus started his jokes about me. "I wasn't doing math," I said quietly, cutting my chicken into smaller pieces than necessary. "I was just thinking." "Dangerous territory for someone who thought our mortgage payment was optional last month," Marcus continued, and I felt heat creep up my neck. That wasn't even true. I'd questioned why it was late, not suggested we skip it entirely. "Marcus," Emma said softly, but he was on a roll now. "No, seriously, you guys should hear this," he said, leaning forward like he was about to tell the joke of the century. "Last week, Sarah comes home with a $100 grocery bill. $100. For what was supposed to be a quick trip for milk and bread." He used air quotes, shaking his head dramatically. "I'm starting to think I married someone who thinks money grows on trees." The table went quiet except for the soft clinking of silverware. Linda's smile had frozen in place, and Robert was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. Emma shot me a sympathetic look, but she didn't say anything. She never did. My hand instinctively moved toward my purse beside my chair, where a manila folder had been sitting for the past 3 weeks. 3 weeks since I'd finally decided I was done being the punchline to his financial responsibility lectures. 3 weeks since I'd started organizing all the evidence I'd been quietly collecting for months. The grocery bill included household supplies we'd been out of for weeks, I said evenly, my voice steadier than I felt. Cleaning supplies, toilet paper, shampoo. Things you said you'd pick up but never did. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "See? There's always an excuse. Always some reason why it's not her fault." He looked around the table like he was addressing a jury. "I love my wife, I really do, but she has zero concept of budgeting. Zero understanding of what things actually cost." "I understand perfectly what things cost," I said, and something in my tone must have shifted because Marcus paused mid-reach for his wine glass. "Really?" He raised an eyebrow, that condescending expression I'd grown to hate. "Because your track record suggests otherwise. Remember the credit card bill from..." "Which credit card bill?" I interrupted, and now my hand was definitely moving toward that folder. "The one where I bought groceries and gas, or one of the other credit card bills? Because we should probably talk about those." The table had gone completely silent now. Even Linda had stopped pretending to eat. Marcus's confidence flickered for just a moment before returning full force. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled the folder onto my lap, my heart hammering against my ribs. 6 months of documentation. 6 months of screenshots, printed statements, and receipts. 6 months of watching my husband lie to his family about who was really the problem in our marriage. "It means," I said, opening the folder with steady hands, "that if we're going to talk about financial responsibility in front of your family, we should talk about all of it." The color drained from Marcus's face so fast I almost felt sorry for him. "Almost." "Sarah," he said, and there was a warning in his voice that I'd heard countless times before. The same tone he used when he thought I was about to embarrass him, when he needed me to just smile and stay quiet. "What are you doing?" "I'm participating in the conversation you started," I said, pulling out the first document. "You wanted to discuss my spending habits with your family, so let's discuss spending habits." Linda cleared her throat nervously. "Maybe we should talk about something else." "No, Mom, it's fine," Marcus said quickly, but his eyes were locked on the papers in my hands. "Sarah's just being dramatic. You know how she gets when she's defensive." That was his favorite move, making me sound unstable, emotional, unreliable. It had worked for so long because I'd let it work. Because I'd convinced myself that keeping the peace was more important than defending myself. "Dramatic," I repeated, laying the first bank statement on the table next to my plate. "Is it dramatic to notice that someone withdrew $300 from our savings account at the Riverside Casino last Tuesday?" The silence that followed was deafening. Robert's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Emma's eyes went wide. Linda made a small, startled sound. That's private financial information," Marcus stammered. "You can't just..." "Private?" I pulled out another statement. "Like how it's private that you've been there 6 times in the past 2 months. Or private like the $400 you lost at the poker tables downtown last weekend when you told me you were at Dave's watching the game?" Marcus stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "Okay, that's enough. Sarah, put those away. Now." But I was done taking orders. Done being the wife who cowered when her husband raised his voice. Done being ashamed of problems I hadn't created. "Sit down," I said quietly, and something in my voice must have shocked him because he actually did. "You started this conversation. We're going to finish it." I pulled out the next document, a credit card statement I'd been dreading having to use. "This is from the Visa card you opened without telling me. The one that's currently maxed out at $5,000. "Marcus," his father said slowly, "what is she talking about?" Marcus's jaw worked silently for a moment. "It's not, it's complicated. There were some unexpected expenses. Like the $1,500 you spent at that electronics store downtown?" I interrupted, pulling out the receipt I'd found crumpled in his jacket pocket. "The one where you bought a gaming setup you told me your friend was lending you?" Emma leaned forward, squinting at the papers. "Marcus, is this real?" "Of course it's not real," he said, but his voice cracked slightly. She's making this up. Probably printed fake documents to try to." I pulled out my phone and opened our joint banking app, turning the screen toward his family. "Your son has spent over $2,000 gambling in the past 8 weeks, I said calmly, while lecturing me about a grocery bill. The look on Linda's face was heartbreaking, confusion mixed with dawning horror as she realized her son wasn't who she thought he was. "You went through my personal accounts," Marcus said, his voice rising. "You violated my privacy." "You." "Joint accounts," I corrected. "Every single one of these transactions came from accounts with both our names on them. And I was just getting started." That's not the point, Marcus said, his voice getting sharper. Marriage is supposed to be about trust, and you've been spying on me. Trust? The word came out harsher than I intended. You want to talk about trust? I pulled out the next document, one that had taken me weeks to work up the courage to print. Here's the loan application you filled out using my parents as references. The one for $8,000 that got approved last month. The blood drained from Linda's face. A loan? Marcus, what did you need $8,000 for? It's not what it sounds like, he said quickly, but I could see sweat beading on his forehead. It's an investment opportunity. A sure thing. I was going to pay it back before my parents found out you'd listed them as co-signers without asking. I set the paperwork down carefully. Because they called me yesterday, Marcus. They wanted to know why a bank was calling them about missed payments. Robert set his fork down with a sharp clink. You put Tom and Margaret's credit at risk? It's not, I didn't think. Marcus was spiraling now, looking around the table for an ally and finding none. Sarah, you're making this sound worse than it is. You're twisting everything. Am I? I reached for another document, but Emma spoke first. Marcus, what investment needs $8,000 that you couldn't discuss with your wife? It's complicated, he said, running his hands through his hair. You wouldn't understand the. Try us, Robert said, and his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Marcus looked at me desperately, and for a split second, I saw the man I'd married. The one who used to tell me everything, who used to ask for my advice before making big decisions. But that man had been missing for months, replaced by someone who made me feel small and stupid at every opportunity. It was cryptocurrency, he mumbled. A friend from work had this system. Oh my God, Emma breathed. Marcus, please tell me you didn't fall for one of those pyramid scheme things. It's not a pyramid scheme. His voice cracked. It's legitimate trading software. The returns were supposed to be. Were. Linda's voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus, where's the money now? The silence stretched so long I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Marcus stared at his plate, his shoulders sagging. It's gone, he finally said. The platform, it turned out to be fake. The money's gone. The sound Linda made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Robert pushed back from the table and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. So let me understand this, I said, my voice eerily calm. You lost $8,000, money that put my parents' credit at risk, on a scam. While spending the past 6 months telling everyone who'll listen that I'm financially irresponsible. Sarah, please, Marcus said, and now he was the one who sounded desperate. Can we talk about this privately? This doesn't need to involve my family. Your family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You made it involve your family the second you decided to humiliate me in front of them. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every family gathering where you made jokes about how stupid I am with money. Emma was staring at her brother like she'd never seen him before. Marcus, how could you do this to her? To her parents? You don't understand, he said, his voice rising again. The pressure I've been under at work, the expectations. What expectations? I pulled out another document, his latest pay stub. The expectations at the job you told me you might lose, but actually got a promotion at 3 months ago? With a raise you never mentioned? Linda's head snapped up. A promotion? Marcus, you told us you were struggling financially. You said Sarah's spending was putting you both in debt. The look he gave me was pure venom. You're destroying my relationship with my family. I'm telling the truth, I said. Something you stopped doing months ago. And I still had more documents in that folder. So much more. Robert turned back from the window, his face granite. What else is in that folder, Sarah? Marcus shot me a look that could have cut glass. Dad, please don't. I'm not talking to you right now, Robert said, his voice ice cold. Sarah, what else? I hesitated for a moment, not because I was having second thoughts, but because what came next would hurt Linda most of all. But Marcus had made his choice when he decided to tear me down in front of these people month after month. The jewelry, I said quietly, pulling out a pawn shop receipt. Linda's hand flew to her throat, where a delicate gold necklace usually sat. Tonight, she was wearing a different one, a cheaper one I'd noticed but hadn't understood until I found the paperwork. What jewelry? Emma asked, but Linda had gone completely pale. The anniversary necklace Dad gave you for your 30th, I said, hating every word. The one with your birthstone. Marcus borrowed it 3 weeks ago, said he was getting it cleaned as a surprise. No, Linda whispered. No, he wouldn't. I placed the receipt gently in front of her. Riverside Pawn. $400. The sound Linda made was like something breaking. Robert moved so fast I thought he might actually hit his son, but instead he gripped the back of his chair, knuckles white. You pawned your mother's anniversary gift? His voice was barely controlled. I was going to get it back. Marcus exploded. It was temporary. The crypto thing was supposed to pay out and I was going to get it back before she ever knew it was gone. But you didn't get it back, Emma said, her voice hollow. Because the money's gone. The receipt shows they only hold items for 30 days, I added, hating myself for having to say it. That was 22 days ago. Linda stood abruptly and walked out of the room. We could hear her footsteps on the stairs, then the distant sound of a door closing. Look what you've done, Marcus hissed at me. She didn't need to know about that. What I done? The folder crackled as my grip tightened. I didn't pawn her jewelry, Marcus. You did. To cover expenses you created with your spending. What spending? I yanked out our joint credit card statement and slammed it down. Show me. Show your family exactly what irresponsible purchases I've made. Marcus grabbed the paper, scanning desperately. Here, this restaurant charge for $60. Your birthday dinner, Emma said flatly, reading over his shoulder. I was there, Marcus. Sarah took you out for your birthday. His finger moved down the page. This department store charge. Close for your job interviews, I said. The interviews for positions you already knew you weren't taking because you'd already gotten promoted. Robert sat down heavily. Son, what happened to you? Nothing happened to me. Marcus's voice cracked. I made some mistakes, okay? Some bad investments. That doesn't make me a terrible person. The lying makes you a terrible person, Emma said quietly. The way you've been treating Sarah makes you a terrible person. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. He gestured wildly at the papers scattered across the table. Work, bills, trying to get ahead. We all have pressure, Robert said. We don't all steal from our mothers and blame our wives. I didn't steal. You took something that wasn't yours and sold it without permission, I said. What would you call it? Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. He grabbed for it, but not before I saw the notification preview. Payment passed due final notice. What's that? Emma asked. Nothing, Marcus said, shoving the phone in his pocket. Just work stuff. But I knew it wasn't work stuff. I pulled out the last document I'd brought, the one I'd hoped I wouldn't have to use. It's the loan shark, I said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The what? Robert's voice was deadly quiet. Marcus went completely still. Sarah, don't. When the crypto money was gone and the credit cards were maxed out, you borrowed money from someone else, I said, my hands shaking as I held the threatening letter I'd found hidden in his car. Someone who doesn't care about payment plans or credit scores. Emma grabbed the paper from my hands, her eyes widening as she read. Marcus, this says they know where you work. Where you live. It's handled, Marcus said, but sweat was running down his face now. I'm handling it. With what money? Robert demanded. You've stolen from your mother, put your in-laws at risk, maxed out credit cards. What money are you going to handle this with? That's when we heard the front door slam, and heavy footsteps in the hallway that definitely weren't Linda coming back downstairs. The footsteps stopped right outside the dining room, and my blood turned to ice. Through the doorway, I could see the shadow of someone large, someone who definitely wasn't supposed to be in this house. Marcus Chen? The voice was gravelly, unfamiliar, and carried the kind of authority that made everyone at the table freeze. Marcus shot up from his chair so fast he knocked over his water glass. How did you? We don't have to do this here. 6 weeks overdue. A man stepped into the doorway, thick-set, wearing a leather jacket despite the warm evening. His eyes swept the room, taking in the family dinner, the scattered financial documents, the fear on everyone's faces. You've been avoiding our calls. There are children upstairs, Robert said, standing slowly, his voice steady despite the circumstances. The man glanced at him with something that might have been respect. This'll just take a minute. Your boy here borrowed some money. Time to pay it back. I told you I needed more time, Marcus said, his voice higher than usual. The investment. The investment was bullshit and we both know it. The man's attention turned to me, then to the paper spread across the table. Looks like your family's learning all about your investments tonight. Emma had gone completely white. Marcus, who is this person? Nobody, Marcus said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. $15,000 isn't a misunderstanding, the man said, and I felt the room tilt around me. 15,000? I whispered. The loan shark letter had mentioned 5,000. Marcus, you told me. Interest, the man said conversationally, like he was discussing the weather. Compounds weekly when payments are missed. Started at 5, now it's 15. Next week it'll be 20. Robert moved protectively toward the stairs. I think you should leave. I think your son should pay what he owes. The man's voice remained calm, but something in his posture shifted. We know about the house, Marcus. Nice neighborhood. Wouldn't want anything to happen to it. That's when I heard it, Linda's voice from upstairs, talking to someone. Probably calling the police, which would either save us or make this infinitely worse. The police are on their way, Robert said, as if reading my mind. The man smiled, and it wasn't reassuring. Police can't help with private debts. But they can ask a lot of inconvenient questions about where Marcus here got the money he's been losing. What does that mean? Emma asked. Marcus had gone gray. It doesn't mean anything. He's just trying to scare us. The client account, I said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. Oh God, Marcus, please tell me you didn't. What client account? Robert demanded. The man was watching our family drama unfold like it was dinner theater. Smart wife. Figured it out faster than most. Marcus works in accounting, I explained to his family, my voice hollow. He processes client payments before they go into the company accounts. Temporary borrowing, Marcus said desperately. I was going to put it back before anyone noticed. The crypto was supposed to. You embezzled money from your job? Emma's voice cracked. Marcus, that's a felony. It's not embezzling if you intend to pay it back. But Marcus was falling apart now, his careful facade crumbling completely. The man pulled out his phone. Interesting thing about embezzlement, sometimes companies offer rewards for information about employee theft. You can't, Marcus whispered. That would ruin me. So would going to prison, the man replied. But that's not my problem. My problem is getting paid. That's when we heard the sirens in the distance, getting closer. The man heard them too, his expression shifting to something more dangerous. You've got 48 hours, he told Marcus. After that, we stopped being polite. He walked out as calmly as he'd walked in, leaving us with the sound of approaching police cars and the ruins of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The sirens grew louder, then abruptly cut off outside. Through the dining room window, I could see red and blue lights painting the neighbors' houses in alternating colors. Marcus was pacing now, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. This is a disaster. This is a complete disaster. Sit down, Robert ordered, his voice carrying an authority I'd never heard before. Before the police come in here, I want to know exactly how deep this goes. Dad, I can handle this. Sit down. Marcus collapsed into his chair just as heavy footsteps approached the front door. Linda's voice drifted from upstairs, talking to what sounded like a 911 dispatcher. The embezzlement, I said, my voice barely steady. How much? Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. It's not what you think. How much, Marcus? 12,000. The words came out in a rush. But it was supposed to be temporary. Just until the crypto paid out. Emma made a strangled sound. $12,000 that doesn't belong to you. I was going to replace it before the quarterly audit, Marcus said desperately. Nobody would have ever known. When's the quarterly audit? Robert asked. The silence that followed told us everything we needed to know. Last week, I said, not really asking. The audit was last week, wasn't it? The doorbell rang, followed by a firm knock. Police. We received a call about a disturbance. They're going to ask questions, Robert said quietly. What are you going to tell them? Nothing, Marcus said quickly. The guy left. There's no crime here. Except for the embezzlement, Emma pointed out. They don't know about that unless someone tells them, Marcus shot back, looking directly at me. The weight of that look hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything, he expected me to protect him. To lie for him. To be complicit in covering up crimes that could destroy innocent people. Mrs. Chen? An officer's voice called from the front door. Is everyone okay in there? Coming, Robert called back, but he didn't move. His eyes were locked on his son. Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your mother and I raised you better than this. Dad. I'm not finished. Robert's voice cut through Marcus's protest like a blade. In about 30 seconds, I'm going to open that door and talk to the police. What I tell them depends on what you do right now. Marcus looked around the table desperately. What do you want me to say? That I screwed up? That I made mistakes? Fine. I made mistakes. This isn't about mistakes, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. This is about choices. You chose to gamble with our money. You chose to lie to your family. You chose to steal from your mother and your job. I was trying to provide for us. Marcus's voice cracked. Everything I did was to try to make our lives better. By pawning my jewelry? Linda's voice came from the doorway. She'd come back downstairs, her face streaked with tears but her posture rigid with anger. By putting Sarah's parents at risk? By bringing criminals into our home? Mom. Don't. She held up her hand. Just don't. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Police. We need to speak with someone about the incident reported at this address. Robert moved toward the door, then stopped. Sarah, what do you want to do? The question hung in the air like smoke. What did I want to do? 6 hours ago, I thought I wanted to humiliate my husband the way he'd humiliated me. I'd wanted to expose his lies, make him face consequences, force him to acknowledge what he'd done. Now, looking at him across the table, sweating, desperate, cornered, I realized I'd never really thought past this moment. I planned the revelation but not what came after. The people at your job, I said slowly. The ones whose money you took. They have families too, don't they? Marcus flinched like I'd slapped him. Retirement funds. Kids' college savings. Mortgage payments. Each word felt heavy in my mouth. How many people, Marcus? How many families are going to suffer because of your choices? I was going to fix it, he whispered. With what money? Emma demanded. You owe $15,000 to loan sharks, $12,000 to your job, $8,000 on the loan that's destroying Sarah's parents' credit. $35,000, Linda said hollowly. Plus whatever's on the credit cards. The officer knocked again, and this time Robert walked to the door. But before he opened it, he looked back at his son one more time. Last chance, Marcus. Do the right thing. The weight of 35 people staring at me, police officers, paramedics who'd arrived as backup, neighbors who'd gathered on the sidewalk, pressed down like a physical force. But it was nothing compared to the weight of Marcus's desperate eyes boring into me from across the table. Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Please. Officer Martinez had been patient, letting us explain the loan shark visit, taking notes about the threats. But I could see the moment when his training kicked in, when he started noticing the financial documents scattered across our dining room table like evidence at a crime scene. And you said this debt originated from what kind of business transaction? Officer Martinez asked, his pen poised over his notepad. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The lie was right there. I could see him trying to form it, trying to find a way to make $15,000 of gambling debt sound legitimate. Cryptocurrency investment, I said before he could speak. He was scammed. It was the truth, just not all of it. Marcus's shoulder sagged with relief, but I wasn't done. The problem is where he got the money to invest, I continued, and Marcus's head snapped up, eyes wide with betrayal. Officer Martinez's pen stopped moving. Where did the money come from, Mr. Chen? Various sources, Marcus said quickly. Savings, credit cards. Client accounts, I said, the words falling out of my mouth before I could stop them. He took money from client accounts at his job. The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Martinez set down his pen and looked directly at Marcus. Sir, are you saying you took money that didn't belong to you? Linda made a sound like air being let out of a balloon. Robert's face had gone completely white. Emma was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Sarah, Marcus breathed, what have you done? But I was thinking about Mrs. Patterson, the elderly client whose account Marcus processed every month. Her social security payments, her late husband's pension. Was her money part of the $12,000? Were her bills bouncing while Marcus threw her payments at cryptocurrency scams? He was going to put it back, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Before anyone noticed. But the quarterly audit happened last week. Officer Martinez was writing again, faster now. Mr. Chen, I need to advise you of your rights. Wait, Robert said, standing up. Officer, surely we can. Dad, don't. Marcus's voice was hollow, defeated. It's over. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Officer Martinez was reaching for his handcuffs when his radio crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice cut through the dining room. All units, we have a reported break-in at 847 Maple Street. Suspects described as 2 males, armed, possibly connected to earlier disturbance at 1247 Oak. My blood turned to ice. Oak Street. Our street. Marcus went rigid. They said 48 hours. Who said 48 hours? Officer Martinez demanded. Through the front window, I could see a police car speeding past, heading toward Maple Street. 2 blocks away. Where my parents lived. Sarah, Marcus whispered, your parents' address was on the loan application. The one they co-signed. The room tilted around me. I grabbed for my phone with shaking hands, hitting my mother's contact. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. The voicemail you have reached. They're not answering, I said, panic rising in my voice. Mom always answers her phone. Officer Martinez was already on his radio. This is Martinez at 1247 Oak. I need units to check on potential victims at 847 Maple. Elderly couple, names Tom and Margaret Henderson, I supplied. Tom and Margaret Henderson. Emma was crying now, quiet sobs that shook her shoulders. Linda had sunk into a chair, her face buried in her hands. This is my fault, Marcus said, and for the first time tonight, I believed he truly understood. If something happens to them. It's not going to, I said, but my voice cracked on the words. The radio crackled again, units responding to 847 Maple, residents appear to have left voluntarily. Neighbor reports seeing them leave with suitcases approximately 1 hour ago. House is secure. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost collapsed. They were safe. Somehow, my parents had figured out they needed to leave. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, staying at Holiday in downtown tonight. We'll explain tomorrow. Are you safe? I showed the message to Officer Martinez, who nodded grimly. Smart people. They probably got a threatening call. So what happens now? Robert asked. Martinez looked at Marcus, who was sitting perfectly still, staring at his hands. Now we sort out how many laws were broken and by whom. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look sickly and surreal. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, watching Marcus get fingerprinted through a glass window, and tried to process how my marriage had exploded into a criminal investigation in the span of 3 hours. Mrs. Chen? Detective Rodriguez sat down across from me with a steaming cup of coffee and a thick file folder. I know this has been overwhelming, but I need to ask you some questions about your husband's activities. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. Through the window, I could see Marcus talking to a public defender, his hands gesturing frantically as he tried to explain the unexplainable. How long were you aware of the gambling? Rodriguez asked, pulling out a legal pad. I suspected for about 6 months, I said. But I didn't have proof until I started documenting everything 3 weeks ago. And the embezzlement from his workplace? That was harder to answer. I knew something was wrong with our finances. The numbers never added up. But I didn't know he was stealing from clients until tonight. Rodriguez made notes, her expression carefully neutral. The loan shark situation, had you seen or heard from these individuals before tonight? Never. I shuddered, remembering the casual way that man had threatened our house, our safety. I didn't even know Marcus had borrowed money from them. We're going to need all the documentation you collected, she said. Bank statements, receipts, loan applications. Everything. I handed over the manila folder that had started this nightmare. 3 weeks of meticulous organization, and now it was evidence in a criminal case. There's something else, Rodriguez said, her tone shifting. We contacted your husband's employer to verify the embezzlement claims. The company has been conducting an internal investigation for the past week. My stomach dropped. They already knew? They suspected. Your husband wasn't as careful as he thought. She flipped through her notes. The preliminary audit flagged several discrepancies. They were planning to confront him Monday morning. So even if I hadn't said anything tonight, Marcus would have been caught anyway. The thought should have been comforting, but instead it made me feel hollow. The company is cooperating fully with our investigation, Rodriguez continued. But they're also talking about pressing charges. Federal charges, since some of the money crossed state lines. Federal charges. The words hit me like a physical blow. What does that mean? Prison time, if he's convicted. Potentially significant prison time. Through the window, I watched Marcus sign something, his shoulders hunched in defeat. The public defender was shaking her head, clearly not pleased with whatever Marcus had told her. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask you directly, did you have any involvement in or knowledge of the embezzlement before tonight? No, I said firmly. I had no idea he was stealing from his job. But you did know about the gambling debts when you made the decision to expose him tonight. That stopped me cold. She was right, I had known about the gambling, the loan sharks, the danger we were in. And I'd chosen to reveal everything anyway, in front of his family, knowing it would destroy him. I was tired of being blamed for his mistakes, I said quietly. But I never wanted it to go this far. Rodriguez studied my face. The thing is, Mrs. Chen, your husband's story keeps changing. First he claimed the crypto investment was legitimate. Then he admitted to the gambling. Now he's saying you knew about everything and helped him hide it. The room felt like it was spinning. That's not true. I didn't think so, but I had to ask. She closed her notepad. One more thing, those loan sharks aren't going to disappear just because your husband's been arrested. If anything, this makes you more vulnerable. What do you mean? They know he can't pay them from prison. So they'll look for other sources. Her expression was grim. Your house, your assets, your family. We can offer some protection, but these people are persistent. As if I needed another reason to regret opening that folder tonight. Detective Rodriguez's words echoed in my head as she led me to a small conference room where Linda, Robert, and Emma were waiting. They looked up when I entered, 3 faces showing varying degrees of shock, disappointment, and something that might have been accusation. The detective says Marcus is going to be charged, Linda said without preamble, her voice hollow. Federal charges. I sat down across from them, feeling like I was facing a tribunal. I know. She told me. Did you know this would happen when you brought out those papers? Robert asked. His voice wasn't angry, exactly, but it wasn't warm either. I knew something would happen, I admitted. I just wanted him to stop lying, to stop making me look like a problem. I didn't think about embezzlement or loan sharks or prison, Emma finished quietly. You didn't think about prison. The word hung between us like a physical presence. None of us had said it out loud until now, but we all knew that's where this was heading. The detective says he could get 5 to 10 years, Robert said, staring at his hands. For a first-time offense. 5 to 10 years. I tried to imagine it, visiting my husband in prison, explaining to people why he was gone, rebuilding a life from the wreckage he'd left behind. The thought made me nauseated. There's something else, I said, knowing I had to tell them before they heard it from someone else. The loan sharks. They're not going to just disappear because Marcus is in jail. Linda's head snapped up. What do you mean? They'll still want their money. $15,000 plus interest. I forced myself to meet her eyes. And they know where we all live. The color drained from Emma's face. They'll come after us? The detective says it's possible. They know about the house, about my parents. I stopped, remembering something that made my blood run cold. Marcus listed all of you as emergency contacts on some of his applications. They might have your addresses too. Robert stood up abruptly and walked to the small window, his shoulders rigid. So because of my son's choices, we're all now targets for criminals. Dad, Emma said softly, but he held up a hand. No, Emma. This is what it is. My son stole money, gambled it away, and now we're all paying the price. He turned back to face us. Including Sarah, who tried to protect him for months before tonight. I didn't protect him, I said. I just documented everything. I was building a case against him. Were you? Linda asked, and there was something sharp in her voice now. Or were you building ammunition to destroy him? The question hit me like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? You had all this information for weeks, she continued, her composure finally cracking. You could have confronted him privately. You could have demanded he get help, go to counseling, confess to his employer. Instead, you waited for the perfect moment to humiliate him in front of his entire family. He was humiliating me. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. Every dinner, every gathering, he made me look stupid and irresponsible while he was the one. So this was revenge, Emma said quietly. This was the truth, I shot back, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure that was entirely accurate. Had I wanted revenge? When I was printing those documents, organizing them in that folder, choosing which ones would hurt the most, had part of me been looking forward to watching Marcus squirm? The truth could have been delivered privately, Robert said, returning to his seat. The way you did it tonight, that was something else. Maybe, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I was so tired of being the villain in his stories. So tired of having his family think I was the problem. And now, Linda said, tears streaming down her face, my son might go to federal prison, criminals are threatening our family, and my anniversary necklace is gone forever. The weight of what I'd set in motion crashed down on me. Yes, Marcus had made the choices that led us here. But I'd made choices too. I'd chosen public humiliation over private confrontation. I'd chosen nuclear war over attempting peace talks. And now we were all living with the consequences. Detective Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Chen? Your husband is ready to be processed. If you want to see him before he's transferred, now would be the time. I followed Detective Rodriguez down a sterile hallway to a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everything look like a crime scene, which, I supposed, it was. Marcus was already sitting when I entered, still wearing his dinner clothes but looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. His hands were cuffed to a chain around his waist, and the sight of it made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite name. 5 minutes, Detective Rodriguez said, then left us alone. We stared at each other across the metal table, and I realized I had no idea what to say. What did you tell your husband when you just helped send him to prison? Are you happy now? Marcus asked finally, his voice hoarse. Is this what you wanted? I wanted you to stop lying, I said. I wanted you to take responsibility for what you'd done. I was handling it. You were making it worse. The words came out sharper than I intended. You stole from your mother, Marcus. You put my parents at risk. You brought criminals to your family's house. I was going to fix everything, he said, but there was no conviction left in his voice. The audit wasn't supposed to happen until next month. I had a plan. What plan? I leaned forward. You owed $35,000 with no way to pay it back. What magical plan was going to fix that? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was going to borrow against the house. The words hit me like ice water. Our house? Without telling me? It was going to be temporary, he said desperately. Just a second mortgage to cover the debts, then I'd pay it off when. When what, Marcus? When your next brilliant investment paid off? I could hear my voice rising, but I couldn't stop it. You would have risked our home without even discussing it with me? What choice did I have? You would have said no. Of course I would have said no. It's our home, Marcus. The only stability we have left. He laughed bitterly. Stability? Sarah, I was trying to build us a better life. Everything I did was for us. No, I said firmly. Everything you did was for you. For the thrill of the gamble, for the fantasy that you could get rich quick without working for it. That's not. Your mother's necklace, Marcus. Look me in the eye and tell me pawning your mother's anniversary gift was for a better life. He couldn't. He stared at the table, his shoulders shaking slightly. The loan sharks aren't going away, I said, switching tactics. They still want their money. What happens to your family now? What happens to my parents? I don't know, he whispered. I don't know how to fix this. For the first time tonight, he sounded genuinely broken. Not angry, not defensive, just defeated. And despite everything he'd done, despite all the lies and theft and manipulation, part of me still wanted to reach across that table and comfort him. The detective says you're telling them I knew about the embezzlement, I said instead. His head snapped up. What? No, I wouldn't. She said your story keeps changing. That you're trying to blame me. Sarah, I swear I didn't say that. I told them you didn't know anything about the work stuff. His eyes were wide, desperate. Why would I try to drag you down with me? Because you're scared, I said. Because you're looking for anyone else to blame. I'm not blaming you, he said, but then his expression shifted. But you have to admit, if you just talked to me privately instead of ambushing me at dinner. There it is, I said, standing up. Even now, even sitting here in handcuffs, you still think this is somehow my fault. That's not what I meant. Time's up, Detective Rodriguez said, appearing in the doorway. As I walked toward the door, Marcus called out behind me, Sarah, wait. The house, the deed is in both our names. If something happens to me, if I can't make the payments. I turned back, and the look on his face made my stomach drop. What about the house payments, Marcus? I borrowed against next month's mortgage, he whispered. For the poker game last weekend. If I don't make a payment by Friday. The room spun around me. We're going to lose the house? Only if I can't. You can't do anything. You're going to federal prison. Detective Rodriguez was watching this exchange with professional interest, probably filing away every word for her report. How long do we have? I asked, my voice barely steady. 3 days, Marcus said. Maybe 4 if I can call the bank and explain. Explain what? That you gambled away the mortgage payment? I felt like I was drowning. Marcus, where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to? I'm sorry, he said, and finally, he sounded like he meant it. Sarah, I'm so sorry. But sorry wasn't going to keep me from being homeless in 3 days. The house felt different when I walked through the front door at 2 a.m., smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. Every familiar object seemed to mock me, the wedding photos on the mantel, the throw pillows I'd carefully arranged last weekend, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter that I now understood in horrifying new detail. I sat at the dining room table where this nightmare had started, surrounded by the scattered remains of our family dinner. Someone, probably Linda, had cleared the plates, but my manila folder still lay open, its contents spread across the tablecloth like autopsy photos. My phone buzzed. A text from my father, are you home safe? Do you need us to come get you? I stared at the message, trying to figure out how to explain that home might not exist in 3 days. That their co-signature on Marcus's loan meant they were tied to this disaster whether they liked it or not. That coming to get me might put them in danger from people who settled debts with threats and broken windows. Before I could respond, another text appeared, this one from an unknown number, your husband owes us money. Payment plans available. Call 555-0147. My blood turned to ice. They'd gotten my number. Somehow, Marcus's loan shark friends had tracked down my personal information, and now they were texting me at 2 a.m. like they were offering a reasonable business arrangement. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Detective Rodriguez, then immediately regretted it. What if involving the police made them more dangerous? What if they decided talking to law enforcement voided Marcus's 48-hour grace period? The house creaked around me, every sound suddenly sinister. Was that the wind, or someone checking the windows? Was that a car door, or just the neighbors coming home late? I found myself checking the locks on every door, closing curtains I'd left open for years, jumping at shadows that had never bothered me before. At 3 a.m., I gave up pretending I could sleep and started going through our financial records with a desperate focus of someone trying to solve a puzzle before time ran out. The mortgage payment Marcus had gambled away was just the beginning. There were credit card minimums due next week, utility bills, car payments. Even if I could somehow scrape together the mortgage money, everything else was building into an avalanche that would bury me. I pulled up our joint checking account on my laptop, hoping maybe I'd missed something, maybe there was money hiding somewhere that could buy me time. The balance stared back at me, $247.83. Not enough to cover groceries, let alone save our house. But there was something else, a pending deposit I didn't recognize. $3,200 from Henderson Family Trust, scheduled to clear tomorrow morning. My parents' emergency fund, the one they'd set up years ago for family crises. They must have transferred it after hearing about Marcus's arrest, trying to help without being asked. The gesture made me cry harder than I had all night. Here were my parents, already at risk because of the loan they'd unknowingly co-signed, sending me their emergency savings to help clean up a mess they had nothing to do with. My phone rang, startling me so badly I knocked over my coffee mug. Unknown number, the same area code as the earlier text. Mrs. Chen? The voice was smooth, professional, nothing like the gravelly threat from the man who'd invaded the dinner. I hope I'm not calling too late. We have some business to discuss. Through the kitchen window, I could see a dark sedan parked across the street that definitely hadn't been there when I got home. I'm not discussing anything over the phone, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Through the window, I could see the outline of someone sitting in the driver's seat of that sedan. Very reasonable, the voice replied. Face-to-face is always better for business. May I come in? Absolutely not. A soft chuckle. Then perhaps you'd prefer to come out. We could take a drive, discuss payment options in a more comfortable setting. The casual way he said it made my skin crawl. It's 3 a.m. Debt doesn't keep business hours, Mrs. Chen. Your husband owes us $15,000, plus interest that's accumulating daily. Since he's unavailable to discuss terms, that responsibility falls to you. I moved away from the window, putting the kitchen island between me and whoever was watching from that car. I don't owe you anything. Those are his debts. Legally, perhaps. But practically speaking, you're his next of kin. You benefit from the assets he acquired with our money. What assets? He lost everything gambling. The house you're sitting in, for instance. Purchased with funds that included our investment. The voice remained conversationally pleasant, like we were discussing weather. That creates what you might call a lien on the property. My laptop screen showed our mortgage details, payments up to date until this month, equity built over 5 years of responsible budgeting back when Marcus had been responsible. Now the stranger was talking about it like he owned a piece of it. You can't just claim someone's house because... Mrs. Chen, let me explain how this works. Your husband borrowed money for what he claimed was a business investment. When that investment failed, the collateral becomes our concern. The house, your cars, any other assets of value. Through the phone, I could hear papers rustling. He had files on us. Documentation. We're not unreasonable people, he continued. We understand that $15,000 is a significant sum. We're prepared to work out a payment plan. What kind of payment plan? $2,000 a month for 8 months. Very manageable for a 2-income household. I almost laughed. We don't have 2 incomes anymore. My husband is going to federal prison. Then you'll need to adjust your lifestyle accordingly. Second job, perhaps. Sell some possessions. Downsize your living situation. The casual way he discussed dismantling my life made my hands shake. And if I can't pay? Everyone can pay, Mrs. Chen. It's simply a matter of priorities. The pleasant tone never wavered. Some people prioritize their credit score. Others prioritize their personal safety. We find most clients discover resources they didn't know they had once they understand the importance of meeting their obligations. A new text appeared on my phone, this one a photo of my parents' house. The timestamp showed it was taken 20 minutes ago. I see you received our message, the voice said. Leave my parents alone. They don't have anything to do with this. They co-signed a loan for your husband. That creates a relationship. Papers rustled again. Tom and Margaret Henderson, 847 Maple Street. Tom's retired from the post office, Margaret taught elementary school. Very nice people, I'm sure. My vision blurred with rage and terror. If you touch them. Mrs. Chen, threats aren't necessary. This is simply business. Your parents guaranteed your husband's loan, which makes them financially responsible for his debts. We're merely ensuring all parties understand their obligations. The sedan's engine started across the street. Through the phone, I could hear the same sound. I'm leaving now, but we'll speak again soon. Perhaps tomorrow evening, when you've had time to consider your options. I'd suggest contacting your bank about extending your credit limits. Selling any valuable jewelry or electronics you might have. Asking friends and family for assistance. Wait, I said, desperation overriding caution. How do I know you'll honor any agreement we make? How do I know paying you won't just make things worse? Because, Mrs. Chen, we're not monsters. We're business people. Once our debt is satisfied, our relationship ends. But until it's satisfied. He let the sentence hang. The line went dead, and through the window I watched the sedan pull away from the curb, its taillights disappearing around the corner like red eyes blinking shut. I was alone in my house that might not be mine much longer, with $247 in checking and loan sharks circling my family like predators. And somewhere in a jail cell downtown, Marcus was probably sleeping peacefully, finally free of the lies that had been eating him alive for months. But I was just beginning to understand the full scope of what those lies were going to cost all of us. I spent the rest of the night researching everything I could about loan sharks, debt collection, and my legal rights. The internet was full of horror stories, people who'd paid thousands only to have the interest keep growing, families terrorized for months over debts that should have been resolved, legitimate businesses used as fronts for money laundering operations. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. My mother. Sarah, honey, are you okay? We saw the news. The news? I scrambled for the TV remote, flipping to the local morning show. There it was, a brief segment about a local accounting firm employee arrested for embezzlement, complete with Marcus's name and his company's logo. It's on their website too, Mom continued. They're saying he stole over $50,000. 50,000. Not 12. The number hit me like a physical blow. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. How much money did you and Dad actually co-sign for? Silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Mom? 8,000 for the personal loan, she said finally. But Sarah, there was something else. Marcus called your father last month, said you two were having trouble with the mortgage company. Asked if we could help with the payment while you sorted out some banking errors. My blood turned to ice. How much? 3,000. We wired it directly to your mortgage company. Her voice was getting smaller. He said you were embarrassed about the mix-up, that you'd pay us back when everything was straightened out. $11,000. My parents had given or guaranteed $11,000 based on Marcus's lies, and now they were on the hook for money they didn't have and couldn't afford to lose. Sarah? Are you there? I'm here, Mom. Listen to me carefully, you and Dad need to stay at that hotel for a few more days. Don't go home. Don't follow your normal routines. Why? What's happening? Before I could answer, my doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a woman in a business suit standing on my porch, holding an official-looking envelope. I have to go, I told Mom. I'll call you back. The woman identified herself as a process server. The envelope contained a lawsuit. Marcus's employer was suing for restitution, plus damages, plus legal fees. They wanted $67,000, and they'd already filed a lien against our house. This means they can force a sale of the property to recover their losses, the process server explained with practiced efficiency. You have 30 days to respond, but I'd recommend consulting an attorney immediately. After she left, I sat on my front steps with a lawsuit in my hands, doing math that made my head spin. $67,000 to the company. $15,000 to the loan sharks. $11,000 my parents were liable for. The mortgage payment Marcus had gambled away. Credit card debt I was still discovering. Over $100,000 in total, with no income and assets that were already being claimed by multiple parties. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. This time it was a text with just an address and a time, 2 p.m. today. Come alone. As I stared at the message, a realization hit me that made everything worse. If Marcus had been stealing for months and the audit had only caught some of it, how much more was there? How many other creditors were going to come forward? How many other people had he listed as references or emergency contacts? The process server's car was barely out of sight when another vehicle pulled up, this one a van with Channel 7 News emblazoned on the side. Apparently, my nightmare was about to become public entertainment. The news van's door slammed shut, and a woman with perfectly styled hair and a microphone headed straight for my front porch. Behind her, a cameraman was already filming, the red recording light like a target aimed at what remained of my dignity. Mrs. Chen? I'm Jessica Walsh from Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your statement about your husband's arrest and the allegations of embezzlement. I backed toward my front door, my hand fumbling for the handle. I don't have any comment. Our sources indicate the theft may be much larger than initially reported, she pressed, stepping closer. Are you cooperating with the federal investigation? The door finally opened behind me, and I stumbled inside, slamming it shut just as the camera swung in my direction. Through the window, I watched Jessica position herself on my lawn, probably recording her segment about the wife who refused to comment and what that might mean. My phone was buzzing constantly now, unknown numbers, blocked calls, reporters who'd somehow gotten my information. I turned it to silent and tried to think, but thinking was becoming impossible when every few minutes brought a new catastrophe. The doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, I could see a man in a sheriff's uniform holding another envelope. More legal papers. This time, it was an eviction notice, not from our mortgage company, but from Marcus's loan shark friends. Somehow, they'd filed paperwork claiming we'd defaulted on a private loan agreement and demanding immediate possession of the property. This isn't legal, I told the deputy. They can't just. Ma'am, I just served the papers, he said apologetically. You'll need to take it up with the courts. But I have to advise you that disputing this type of claim can be complicated. These private lending operations sometimes have documentation that's hard to challenge. After he left, I called the number Detective Rodriguez had given me, but got voicemail. Then I tried calling a lawyer, but the first 3 firms I reached said they couldn't take the case due to conflicts of interest or client capacity issues. The 4th lawyer was more direct. Mrs. Chen, your case involves federal crimes, organized lending, and multiple competing claims on the same assets. My retainer alone would be $15,000. Money I didn't have to fight debts I didn't create. The news van was still parked outside when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman whose account I'd worried about, knocked on my back door. She looked shaken, clutching a piece of paper in her trembling hand. Sarah, dear, I'm so sorry to bother you. But the bank called this morning. She held up what looked like an overdraft notice. They're saying there's been some kind of error with my account. That money was taken out that shouldn't have been. My heart sank. How much money, Mrs. Patterson? $800. My mortgage payment bounced because of it. Her voice cracked. At my age, I can't afford to have credit problems. And the bank is saying it might take weeks to sort out because there's some kind of federal investigation. $800 that Marcus had stolen from this sweet woman who brought me cookies at Christmas and worried about her late husband's medical bills. $800 that had probably gone toward a poker hand or a cryptocurrency scam while Mrs. Patterson's mortgage payment bounced. I saw the news, she continued quietly. About Marcus. Is it true? Did he really take people's money? I wanted to lie, to protect her from the full truth. But she was going to find out anyway, and she deserved honesty from someone in this mess. Yes, I said. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Patterson. I didn't know until last night, but yes. He took money that wasn't his. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected the answer but hoped she was wrong. What happens now? To people like me? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm going to try to find out. After she left, I sat in my kitchen staring at that address the loan shark had texted me. 2 p.m. 3 hours away. Whatever they wanted to discuss, I had a feeling Mrs. Patterson's $800 was just the tip of the iceberg. The address led me to a small office building downtown, the kind of place that housed insurance agencies and tax preparers. Nothing threatening about it, which somehow made it more terrifying. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching people in business suits walk in and out like this was just another Tuesday afternoon. The office on the 3rd floor had Henderson Financial Services painted on frosted glass doors. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gotten the wrong address, then I realized they'd probably used my parents' last name deliberately, another psychological pressure point. The man behind the desk wasn't the gravelly-voiced thug from dinner. This one wore an expensive suit and had the kind of smile that belonged in a bank commercial. Mrs. Chen, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. I'm Mr. Davidson. I believe we spoke last night. The office was disturbingly normal, family photos on the desk, motivational posters on the walls, a coffee machine in the corner. If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought this was a legitimate financial consultation. Let's discuss your payment options, Davidson said, sliding a folder across the desk. We prepared several scenarios based on your current situation. I opened the folder to find detailed financial projections, complete with charts and graphs. They knew everything, my salary, our mortgage balance, even my parents' retirement accounts. The thoroughness was more frightening than any threat. Option 1 assumes you sell the house immediately and use the proceeds to cover 60% of the debt, he continued pleasantly. The remaining balance would be structured as a 5-year payment plan. And if I choose none of these options? His smile never wavered. Mrs. Chen, everyone chooses an option eventually. It's simply a matter of which one causes the least disruption to your life. That's when I noticed the photo on his desk, a family picture with 2 young children. Normal people with normal lives, funded by loan sharking and financial terrorism. There's something you should know, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been recording this conversation. And before I came here, I sent copies of all your texts and documents to 3 different news stations. For the first time, Davidson's expression flickered. I also sent everything to the FBI Financial Crimes Division, I continued, warming to my theme. See, the thing about criminals is they eventually get greedy enough to leave evidence everywhere. Like using my parents' name for your fake business. Like filing fraudulent eviction notices. Like documenting threats in writing. Davidson was no longer smiling. Mrs. Chen, I think you're misunderstanding. No, I think you're misunderstanding. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. My husband destroyed our lives with his lies and theft. But you know what? That means I don't have anything left to lose. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Davidson? The FBI is very interested in how your organization knew about federal investigation details before they were made public. Apparently, that suggests someone inside law enforcement has been feeding you information. The look of panic that crossed his face told me everything I needed to know. By the time I reached my car, 3 black SUVs were pulling into the parking lot. FBI, just like I promised. Because while Marcus had been busy destroying our finances, I'd been busy learning exactly who to call when organized crime tried to intimidate federal witnesses. Turns out, being married to a criminal teaches you useful skills. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rodriguez, arrests made. You're safe. Call me. For the first time in 24 hours, I could breathe.